If you're like me, you spent most of the last month overeating. You can applaud that. First, for comfort during the ice storm, and then, of course, the holidays. And if you're even more like me, then you have a plan to lose a few of those extra pounds in the new year. Now, if the similarities continue, then you too are finding yourself having more than occasional visions of chocolate and dreams of eating huge orders of French fries and other forbidden delights. But we who diet know it's about short-term sacrifices for the sake of a long-term goal. We can handle a degree of temporary deprivation to gain a sense of moral gratification. Of course, there will be the occasional moment of weakness when short-term gratification will win the day, followed way too soon by a feeling of guilt, or at least a feeling of moral failure. But it will only steel our resolve for our next battle with temptation. The dieter's cyclical challenge has many similarities with the temptation to marital infidelity, or financial dishonesty, or being untruthful in a relationship. In each of these situations, people know what's right and what they ought to do, but in a moment of weakness, they give in, and later find themselves saddled with guilt and a disquieted spirit, and their sense of self-respect is diminished. Temptation is so pervasive that it's been said that the person who comes up with a cure for temptation will be richer than the person who comes up with a cure for the common cold. And in the same way that we are more susceptible to a cold when our resistance is down, we are more susceptible to temptation when we are distressed or depressed or feeling low in self-esteem or self-respect. In certain times and in certain traditions, evil and temptation have been thought to take on form and flesh as the devil, Satan, the serpent, the dragon, and many other incarnations. However, for many people in Western society, the notion of the devil has become old-fashioned and unbelievable. We're not buying the excuses when someone tells us that the devil made me do it. That said, we can't help but listen to the news every day and hear of horrendous evil. We hear of rape and child abuse and genocide and bombing and torture, to name a few. And we even experience in our own lives at times a strong pull to betray our own values, to do things that we know might harm ourselves or others. In that sense, we have a dilemma, in that we experience something very real and often very dangerous in our own lives, but we no longer have a vocabulary or a set of symbols with which to talk about it. Much of our language around sin and transgression has become psychologized. Instead of having a sense of evil, we now seem to blame heinous acts and bad behavior on a person's unfortunate upbringing, on abuse they suffered as children, or on mental illness. I came to realize the power of having a vocabulary and a set of metaphors and symbols to explain our trials and our tribulations when I went through my own darkest time. It was right after my daughter died, and I found myself thrust into a place of confusion and turmoil and desolation. It was a time when nothing seemed to make sense anymore. I came to appreciate in that very difficult time the role of metaphors and symbols in a whole new way. One example that I'll always remember is the metaphor of the three horses. It comes from a book, Iron John, by Robert Bly. It's a book about men that explains that there are three horses that we all ride at different times in our lives. Each horse represents a level of initiation into adulthood and into wisdom. One horse is the red horse of intensity. Riding the red horse involves the fiery, dangerous, passionate, irresponsible things we do that are usually associated with adolescence. The red horse gallops through risky behaviors and experimentation. Tragically, not everyone survives riding the red horse, and parents often hold their breath and pray that their children survive that part of their lives. And those who do make it take something from that experience that they bring with them into the rest of their lives, something of value. Yet some people who never rode the red horse as a youth find themselves driven to do so later in their lives. We usually call it a midlife crisis. And in men, the red horse often looks like a red sports car, sometimes a red Mustang. And a second horse is the white horse of engagement. Riding the white horse is our journey into responsibility and community, into duty and worldly success. Riding the white horse is associated with building a career, having a family, and getting involved in community-oriented activity and volunteerism and those types of things. And one of the problems with getting onto the white horse, if you have not yet ridden a red horse as a youth, is that once a person is on the white horse of engagement, it can be very harmful to your career and yourself and your family to begin riding the red horse, since you have commitments and important responsibilities to others. We see this kind of thing in the lives of clergy and politicians and judges who get themselves into trouble well into their careers, and it makes us wonder why someone with so much going on in their lives, so much going for them, would fall into such temptation. One reason can be that they rode the white horse all of their lives, and so they never took the chance to explore the parts of themselves and of life that are represented by the red horse. Now, the third initiation is the black horse of humanity. The black horse is the inevitable ride through the valley of grief, loss, pain, and tears. Everyone who lives long enough eventually rides the black horse. Our black horse experiences include the darkest times in our lives, when a loved one dies or when a relationship ends. These experiences connect us on a deeper level with all people. The tears associated with riding the black horse are a baptism, so to speak, with all humanity. Of course, riding the black horse is no fun. It's painful, sad, and very unpredictable. And in our culture, which values happiness as much as life and liberty, we don't tend to make a lot of room for pain and sadness and being out of control. In my own experience of riding the black horse, I know that I was driven to get off as quickly as possible. The temptation can be to jump onto a red horse because they're a lot more fun to ride, at least initially. When you feel like you're riding an uncomfortable and erratic horse through a desert of sadness and loneliness and longing, red horses start looking very appealing. Red horses can come in the form of alcohol, drugs, sexual irresponsibility, gambling, and other temptations to escape. And in a time when our spirit is broken and our resolve is weak, it can be hard to fight off temptations that at other times might not be as alluring.